From the Oklahoma newsroom, it's time for Thunder Thursday. I'm Jenni Carlson here with Thunder beat writer Brett Dawson, and since we're in the off season, we're going on with the short team here. We're going slim, but that's all right. We still got a lot to talk about. Starting with some off-season talk percolating about Paul George, which is obviously something that we've become accustomed to. I think we may have talked about Paul George every week since the season ended, but this is coming from a source who tends to be pretty plugged in, right, Brett?
Yeah, Adrian Wojnarowski from ESPN, who is, he's the most noted kind of news-breaking reporter who covers the NBA. And he had some stuff to say this week. ESPN did kind of a draft free agency preview. As Woj said on the show, it's never too early for free agency. So even though we're a long way, the finals aren't even over just yet. They're effectively over, but not quite over. But what Woj said effectively was that, when Paul George got traded to the Thunder, the idea was he would play for a year in Oklahoma City, and then he would go to L.A. and play for the Lakers, his hometown team, the team he kind of told the Pacers, his group, his management told the Pacers that's the team he preferred when it was time to trade him. And that has changed a little. The way Woj put it is that there's a real opportunity here for the Thunder to re-sign Paul George, keep him in Oklahoma City. He liked playing with Westbrook. He liked playing with Steven Adams. He liked playing for Billy Donovan. These are all things that Woj said. He did not mention Carmelo Anthony, whether that's intentional or not. That didn't come up. But, I think the Thunder is going to be in a real fight here. The Lakers are going to represent a real threat to get Paul George. But the Thunder is going to be in that fight. I think it's going to be a thing where, there'll be a whole lot of factors, and one of those factors is the guy who's still playing in the finals right now, LeBron James.
Right, and we'll get to that in a second. But one of the other things that Woj said was that some other teams are probably in the mix. Now, whether this will be a real, option for Paul George, I don't know. If he's leaving Oklahoma City, is he really going to go to one of these other teams? But among them were Philadelphia, obviously an up-and-coming team in the East, a team that, you wouldn't have to go through the Warriors to get to the NBA Finals potentially. And then also the Houston Rockets, which obviously they've acquired talent, but are in the West, and the Warriors are there. What's the reality as it relates to those other teams that Woj threw out, Brett?
To me, I don't know about Houston. Houston is, they have a real ability to work the salary cap. And they have an interesting summer coming up in the sense that, there was a report out this week that Chris Paul is not willing to take less money. He wants to get a big deal out of Houston. He's a free agent. Clint Capella is a restricted free agent. He's a guy who's very important for Houston to keep around. Whatever else they do, they need Capella to be a part of that. So their cap is going to be an interesting thing to kind of maneuver. Can they get Ryan Anderson off their books? They haven't had any success in doing that. Maybe now that he's going to be moving into the last year of his contract, that becomes a little easier. Is Eric Gordon a movable part? He's a guy that people probably would have some interest in, but who can you trade him to that has cap space so that you don't have to absorb contracts back? So they've got to do a lot of gymnastics, but it's the thing that Houston really is the best at in terms of building a team. Nobody's better at kind of those salary cap gymnastics than the Rockets are. So that one, I think it's maybe legitimate. We'll see. Philadelphia is an intriguing one because nobody really talks about Philly as an option for him. But from a pure basketball standpoint, in terms of the fit, what they have, how he could play off the pieces, I think he's a guy who really elevates them. And would make a lot of sense. They and Boston figure to be the teams, particularly if LeBron James isn't in Cleveland, that are battling it out for the East, and he would give them a little bit of an edge. So I think both of those are interesting ones, but from a basketball standpoint, Philly is the one that's the most intriguing to me.
Well, and you mentioned LeBron, and that is a big question. What does the summer hold for him? And I think the thought from a lot of people is it's not Cleveland. He's going to be somewhere else. Now, if that's reality, I don't know. But, there's even been talk, maybe he and Kevin Durant are pairing up somewhere. I mean, there's all sorts of scenarios out there. But what is, in your mind, Brett, the reality that it's a Lakers pairing of LeBron and Paul George?
It's certainly a possibility. I talked to somebody, and this was weeks ago. This was early in the offseason, soon after the Thunder season ended. This is somebody who just kind of has a bit of a finger on the pulse in the league, who said around the league, the thought is it's a toss-up with the Lakers and the Thunder. But if LeBron is in LA, then that shifts the scales. It tips the scales very much in the Lakers' favor. And that was sort of the consensus thought. Now, that's been a month. Who knows if that's still the case? Who knows if that was ever the case? This is kind of what people were hearing. And it makes a lot of sense. If LeBron James is there, look, Paul George has built a relationship here. He's built a relationship with Russell Westbrook. He seems to like the organization. But he has a good relationship with LeBron James. And Paul George is not going to make the Lakers a championship contender. He's not going to make the team good enough to contend with the Warriors. LeBron James probably also isn't going to do that on his own. Together, hard to say whether they could actually be better than Golden State if Golden State keeps everybody in place. But you get a lot closer. And if you're LeBron, you're looking at the team that you have now versus the team you could have in LA, a guy like an up-and-comer like Lonzo Ball, a guy like Kyle Kuzma, Paul George. You got some positional maybe redundancy there, and you'd have to figure out all the parts. But that's a really good start when you have a good young point guard, LeBron James and Paul George.
You know, you wonder, though, the West being so tough, it's the place where the Warriors are. So you start right there. The Sixers, news percolating out just this morning that it sounds like Brian Colangelo's on the way out, whether it's going to be resignation, firing, whatever you want to term it. But you wonder if that doesn't sort of signal to pieces, great superstars like a LeBron or a Paul George, that they're serious about really moving forward, and not sort of wandering around in the wilderness. And that's a spot in the East. Your competition is not going to be the Warriors. Has that become more tantalizing to these guys? It
could. This hire is really interesting for them. I mean, I think if they can go out and get a general manager who excites people, or who has that, maybe even if it's just a relationship, maybe if he has some dynamic with those guys, that's going to be a really interesting thing to follow. And look, as has been the case in free agency several times, LeBron is going to set he'll not just set the market, because he'll take whatever amount of money he wants to take. It's LeBron James. If he wants to get a max contract, he'll get it. If he is willing to take a little less, he'll take a little less. Nobody's going to fault him. He sets the market, but he also sort of is that piece when he's a free agent, and he's been a free agent several times. He's sort of the piece that a lot of stuff doesn't really happen. The big plates don't shift until LeBron is in place. So we'll see what happens with him, and that's going to dictate a lot of the sort of trickle down.
All right, we'll continue to talk about this in the offseason, I am sure. But if folks here in Oklahoma City have need for a little Thunder fix, we've got one for you.
Yeah.
Not we, but there's one out there, and it's happening Saturday evening as part of the Dead Center Film Festival. What's the deal, Brett?
Yeah, so the Thunder has produced an in-house production. It's a documentary about Nick Carlson. It's a documentary short, don't know how long it is, but it's going to premiere at 9 p.m. Saturday. That's at Myriad Gardens. I think the weather forecast looks okay as we record this. It was not great, but I think on Saturday it looks okay. So it'll be an outdoor screening. And, look, it's in-house. We're not going to get a real hard-hitting look at Nick Carlson one way or the other, but it is a documentary that's going to highlight some things about his career. The Thunder's video staff kind of put it together. Matt Tumbleson, their PR guy, is one of the executive producers of the film. So that'll be an interesting thing to see. I think they'll have a pretty good turnout for that. And, it's Nick Carlson hasn't really done a lot in terms of, he left kind of without a big production. I don't really expect him to be there. I don't know for sure where that stands. Eric Horner's actually talking to him today. But it'll be a little bit of a way to sort of say goodbye to Nick Carlson in a public way that didn't really happen before.
I know that, as you mentioned, this is Thunder produced, but still, some of this stuff is going to be behind the scenes stuff. Images and stuff that people don't get to see, including us,
right.
Which, even though it might be a little bit, sanitized by the Thunder to show the best, at least people will get to see some things that they may never have gotten to see from Thunder headquarters and just, what it looks like behind the scenes.
Yeah, and if you're gonna get this sort of like in-house piece, who better than Nick Carlson, who there's really not a lot of controversy. So you're not like hiding a lot of stuff about Nick Carlson. So yeah, that's going to be good. The movie poster is a real striking image of Carlson like alone in a hallway, and it's the shiny wall sort of he's reflected in it. And that's the kind of thing we don't see. We don't see these moments sort of back in the hallway, back in the locker room. So I'm interested to see what it is. I'll be there for the screening. I'm excited to see it. And the thing about the Thunder producing it is they have a really good video staff. They got the people who put together those pregame videos and all that. Those are the people that are going to be working on it. It's going to be it'll be a good product.
All right. Saturday, by the way, could also be the first day officially of the off season in the NBA, because Game 4 in the NBA Finals Friday night. It's looking more and more like this is over, Brett. I mean, we saw obviously what happened at Golden State, a near victory that was tossed away by the Cavs in Game 1. Warriors roll Game 2. Then they go to Cleveland and do the same. I mean, there's really no coming back from a 3-0. Can the Cavs at least win one?
Yeah, I think the question is, do the Cavs even really want to win one? How much desire is left? LeBron James has played more minutes than he's ever played in his career. He's carried a bigger load than all but maybe one season in his career. This is probably comparable to the first time he got the Cavs to the finals before he went to Miami. He looks to me, even last night, you just look at him, he rolls his ankle and he's fighting through that. His eye is all messed up. His shot, which has been so good through the playoffs, looks a little off. You know, LeBron seems superhuman sometimes. He's still human, and I think he's hitting a wall a little bit. I think the load he's had to carry is catching up to him. There's so little help around him. And what we saw on Wednesday night is just the dichotomy, the real difference between these two teams. You've got two great players in Steph Curry and Klay Thompson who are virtual no-shows until Curry makes a couple of really big shots down the stretch. But Kevin Durant is able to elevate that team even as those guys have bad nights. LeBron plays a pretty good game, and by his standard in these playoffs, it was really kind of average, and he has a 30-point triple-double. We know something about those around here. They're hard to get. But he, by any normal standard, he was exceptional. He was just okay for LeBron, and when he's just okay, they have no shot to win. You mentioned that first team he got to the finals, and that was such a triumph. I mean, it was carrying a bunch of guys that have been cast-offs a lot of situations, getting them to the finals. But to me, Brett, it's a reminder of just how the league has evolved, because if it was, like, let's say the Rockets would have won the West, which, we were this close to, it still seems like that's a hill that LeBron and this Cavs team is not getting over. There's just, these super teams have changed the dynamic in so many ways that it's almost unavoidable. Yeah, I mean, it's the days of having a chance to win, and really even when he got to the finals the first time, they got swept way back in the day with Cleveland when they played San Antonio. That it's always been hard, but it's really hard now to think that you're going to win a series without a superstar sort of running mate or sidekick, and really you almost need two along with you. You really got to have three. The way the Warriors shoot the ball, the way they defend, Draymond Green is such a great complementary piece. They're such a well-constructed team. It's going to be hard. The crazy thing about this is not only is it almost impossible for LeBron to do this, but it's hard to survey the league and say, what is the move? Where is the team? Maybe it's Houston keeping everything and adding LeBron. That's going to be so hard to do. Maybe that's the move that gets a team over the hump, but it's hard to find those moves. The Warriors are so much better than everybody else, even though a couple of games in this series have been close. Last night was close. Game one was close. It still has felt inevitable all the way through this, and it's hard to picture the team that makes that seem less than inevitable. Now, Boston's on the come, but, maybe the Warriors' window is going to have to close before Boston can really get there.
Yeah, it's interesting that, we heard Adam Silver say before this series got going that a hard salary cap might be something they're considering. And this is why, because you get sort of these repeat teams, although a year ago he was saying, well, everybody just needs to try to be the Warriors. So I don't know what to believe in all of that.
I do know this. If they put in a hard cap, they'll be throwing a party out on Britain Road. I can promise you that. Small market teams like the Thunder would be thrilled with a hard cap.
Exactly. Well, lots to follow in the offseason. We'll see if we're truly in the offseason by the time we're here next week. I got to think we will be. But be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoma.